Dear students, today we learn the theme nature of space and time. Along with movement and systemicity, space and time are the most important forms of being. There are several variants of definition of space and time, and among them the following. Space is mode of existence of the objective world, inextricably linked with the time. Or another definition. Space is a form of contemplation, perception of the representation of things, the main factor of higher empirical experience. Time is the form of flow of all mechanical, organic, and mental processes, the condition for the possibility of movement, change, development. Let's consider objectivist conceptions of the nature of space and time. And we will start with substantial conceptions. Let's consider Plato's substantial conception of the nature of space and time. The main text where we can find the information about views of Plato on space and times is Dialogue Timaeus. Being and place, or koratopos in ancient Greek, literally means rounded place, and becoming were existing three distinct things even before the heaven came into existence. Being is eternal, self-identical intelligible ideas or intelligible cosmos, which served as a model, or in ancient Greek, paradigma, which God Demiurge looked at when creating our world. Becoming, or in ancient Greek, Genesis, is the whole empirical realm perceived by the senses, but not conceivable by the mind. All visible and tangible beings and things that are born and die, but never exist in the true sense of the word. Koratopos is a medium. This is that of which, like wax, ideas are imprinted, in which empirical things arise. This is their mother and nurse. It is the substratum of the five elements, inaccessible to either the senses or the mind, but only apprehensible by a kind of bastard reasoning, by the aid of non-sensation, barely an object of belief. Koratopos is the nurse of all becoming, which is able to take any geometric shape. According to Pivovarov, matter, or koratopos, is identical to space, since space is the possibility of any sensually perceived geometric figures. However, according to Tatiana Borodai, koratopos, or the matter in which these geometric shapes and bodies exist, should be conceived not as empty space, but rather as a mathematical continuum. Its main characteristic is infinity, or in ancient Greek to apeiron, not in the sense of infinite extension, but in the sense of absolute indeterminacy and infinite divisibility. Such matter, or space, is opposed as the principle of plurality to a single being, as infinity and uncertainty to ideas as a source of certainty, as a meaningless necessity to the ideal mind. Possessing no qualitative characteristics, the primary matter, or koratopos, or space, is endowed with one potential property. It is capable of mathematical structuring. In this mathematical continuum, the primary mixture of triangles takes place before the start of the activity of the demiurge creator. This matter was called in the Middle Ages Silva, the second version of the translation of ancient Greek Yle, or Hule, substratum. The birth of the elements from the reflection of eidos in the core topos. When true being or eidos, or in plural eidos, is reflected in the core topos, a multitude of triangles, equilateral and right-angled isosceles arise, which are then ordered into 5 types of regular polyhedra. Each of the 5 types corresponds to one of the primary elements. The tetrahedron is fire, the octahedron is air, the icosahedron is water, the cube is earth, and the dodecahedron is the element of heaven. Subsequently, the 5th element, or in Latin quinta essentia, was called ether, and was considered as a particular subtle living fire, of which the celestial sphere and all celestial bodies are composed. Here you can see the relationship of 5 elements, according to Plato. As I told, the elements are regular polyhedra, and here you can see picture with these so-called Platonic solids. Earth is cube, water icosahedron, air and octahedron, fire tetrahedron, and ether dodecahedron. The tetrahedron personified fire, since its top is directed upwards, like a flaming fire. Icosahedron as the most streamlined water, the cube the most stable of the figures, the earth, and the octahedron is the air. This system can be compared with the 4 states of matter: solid, liquid, gaseous, and plasma. The 5th polyhedron, the dodecahedron, symbolized the whole world and was revered as the most important. It is interestingly that in contemporary research we can find some support to the views of Pythagoras and Plato. For example, the angular spectra obtained in the Wilkinson microwave anisotropy probe experiment are in the best agreement with the dodecahedral model of the universe. This regular polyhedron, which has 12 pentagonal facets, resembles a soccer ball sewn from pentagonal pieces. It turns out that in a space with a small positive curvature, regular dodecahedrons can fill the entire space without holes and mutual intersections. With a certain ratio between the size of the dodecahedron and the curvature, 120 spherical dodecahedrons are needed for this. Moreover, this complex structure of hundreds of balls can be reduced to a topologically equivalent structure consisting of only one dodecahedron, in which the opposite facets rotated by 180 degrees are identified. Let's consider Plato's views on the universe. The eidos, or model, first model, prototype of our universe is eternal, rational, blissful, perfect, and self-sufficient living creature. This creature is the one and the only and has the soul, so-called world soul. The body of this creature, that is the visible aspect of the universe, is material, therefore by its nature mortal, but it will never perish, will never die, for this is not desired by its creator. There is no emptiness inside the body of the universe. It is limited and has the shape of a sphere that rotates uniformly around its center, that is, around the earth. Unlike the core topos, which ontologically precedes the universe as its necessary condition, time, or chronos in ancient Greek, is born later than the cosmos sky, or Uranus, because time is the rotation of the celestial sphere. It, like the sensible cosmos itself, is a likeness of the ideal model, or eidos. The visible universe is of movable image of eternity, and as he, means creator, set in order the heaven of that eternity which abides in unity, he made an eternal image moving according to number, even that which we have named time. Let's consider the next substantial conception of the nature of space and time, the conception of Isaac Newton. This is properties of space and time according to substantial conception of Isaac Newton. Space is homogeneous, motionless, three-dimensional, and time is uniform and unidirectional. According to Isaac Newton, space and time are substances, independent entities that do not depend on each other, on matter, and on subjects, on things. Space is the medium in which all things exist and which is independent of things. Time is a set of uniform moments following one after the other, in the direction from the past to the future. Space and time are substances that do not depend on the movement of things and their interaction. Absolute space is a pure extension, the environment in which all things are located. If they disappeared, the environment, the medium, would remain. Space is so-called sensorium Dei. This is Latin concept which was used by Isaac Newton. Sensorium Dei is living, feeling space, the divine sense organ. Absolute time is pure duration, which always flows in the same way, regardless of the processes taking place in the world. Let's consider definitions from one of the most influential philosophical works of Isaac Newton, Mathematical Principle of Natural Philosophy. Absolute space, in its own nature, without regard to anything external, remains always similar and immovable. In opposite, relative space is some movable dimension or measure of the absolute spaces, which our senses determine by its position to bodies, and which is vulgarly taken for a movable space. Place is a part of space which a body takes up, and is according to the space either absolute or relative. Absolute motion is the translation of a body from one absolute space into another, and relative motion, the translation from one relative place into another. According Newton, absolute time, absolute true and mathematical time, of itself and from its own nature flows equably without regard to anything external, and by another name it is called duration. The true or equable progress of absolute time is liable to no change. The duration of perseverance of the existence of things remains the same, whether the motions are swift or slow, or none at all. And therefore it ought to be distinguished from what are only sensible measures thereof, and out of which we collect it by means of the astronomical equation. In opposite, relative time is apparent and common time, is some sensible and external, whether accurate or unequivocal measure of duration by means of motion, which is commonly used instead of true time, such as an hour, a day, a month, a year. Here is the fragment from Optics or a treatise of the reflections, the famous tractate of Isaac Newton. Whence is it that nature doth nothing in vain? And whence arises all that order and beauty which we see in the world? To what end are comets, and whence is it the planets move one and the same way in orbs, concentric, while comets move all manners of ways very eccentric? How came the bodies of animals to be contrived with so much art, and for what ends were their several parts? Was the eye contrived without skill in optics, and the ear without knowledge of sounds? How do the motions of the body follow from the will, and whence is the instinct in animals? Is not the sensory of animals that place to which the sensitive substance is present, and into which the sensible species of things are carried through the nerves and brain, that they may be perceived by their immediate presence to that substance? And these things, being rightly dispatched, does it not appear from phenomena that there is a being incorporeal, living, intelligent, omnipresent, who is infinite space, and it were in his sensory, or in Latin sensorium, sees that things themselves intimately and thoroughly perceives them, and comprehends them wholly by their immediate presence to himself, of which things the images only carried through the organs of sense into our little sensoriums, and they are seen and beheld by that which in us perceives and thinks. And though every true step made in this philosophy brings us not immediately to the knowledge of the first cause, yet it brings us nearer to it, and on that account is to be highly valued. Some researchers think that sensorium day can be considered as an analog of the world soul. For example, Pyama Pavlovna Gaidenka. She explains an analogy between the sensitive substance of a person or animals, for example, the soul, on the one hand, and the divine sensory or sensorium day, unwittingly leads to the idea that Newton's absolute space is in essence something like the world soul of the new Platonists, which, as it were, connects all things in the universe, just as the soul of an animal is the connection of all its organs. This understanding of absolute space is also supported by the fact that, according to Newton, it is indivisible. Now let's start our consideration of relational conceptions of the nature of space and time. And we will start with Aristotle's conception. Please see this scheme of 10 categories, which Aristotle distinguishes in his famous first part of Organon categories. The first category is the main category, so-called substance, or in Greek esti, ousia, or in Latin essentia. For example, we can see he is a man, and in this sentence he is, the word he is substance. The second category, quantity. For example, he is of some height. The third category is quality. For example, he is educated. The fourth category is relation. For example, he is older or younger than the other. The fifth category, which of our interest, is place. For example, he is in Lyceum. The sixth category, time. For example, he is in Lyceum today. The seventh category, position. For example, he sits or he stays, and so on. The eighth position, having or possession. For example, he has sandals. The ninth category, action or doing. For example, he speaks. And the last category, being affected. For example, he is talked about. According to Aristotle, the void or vacuum does not exist. Space is a system of natural places occupied by material bodies. From this idea, we can name of this position, from Latin relatio, relation. Extension should be understood not as the sum of bodies, but as the sum of the places of bodies. There is no extension other than bodies separable from them and existing actually. As Aristotle states, the place of a thing is neither a part nor a state of it, but is separable from it. For place is supposed to be something like a vessel, the vessel being a transportable place, but the vessel is no part of the thing. And now we will consider the second relational conception of space and time, the conception of Gottfried Wilhelm Leibniz. Space and time, according to Leibniz, are special relationships between objects, and without them they do not exist. Space is the set of the places of relative positions of things, and time is the succession of events. We comprehend extension by comprehending order in coexistences, but we must not understand extension and also space as a kind of substance. Place is that which belongs to different existences at different times, when they perfectly coincide in their relations of coexistence with some state supposed to be fixed at one time or another. Then space is what exists, the totality of these places. Space is not an autonomous reality independent of matter. It is also not a property of or organ of God. It is criticism of Isaac Newton's sensorium Dei conception. Space is each time objectively composed by the mutual arrangement of many individual bodies and is conditioned by the repulsive forces acting within them. As Leibniz states, as for my opinion, I have said more than once that I hold space to be something purely relative, as time is that I hold it to be an order of coexistences, as time is an order of successions. For space denotes, in terms of possibility, an order of things that exist at the same time, considered as existing together without entering into their particular manners of existence. And when many things are seen together, one consciously perceives this order of things among themselves. This is fragment from correspondence from one of letters between Leibniz and Samuel Clarke. Thank you for your attention. And this is the end of this part of our lections.